Hey guys, Kara with Ice Cream for Buttercream, and today I have something really cool, really fun, bright, and colorful. It's the rainbow peony. And this peony is not like the normal ones you see, I think, other than the fact that it's rainbow, but the leaves, or the petals actually, they're not wired. So we're not having to wire each individual petal. The only thing that's wired is the base of the peony. So I think that might make it a little bit easier on you. And I also have a video, I'll put a link to the video in the description below on how to make the base, which means the calyx and things that go underneath the base of your flower, and then also how to make the leaves and how to color them, just kind of give them a realistic look. But for now, let's work on making the rainbow peony.
So I've got some gum paste or fondant with Tylose, and I've got it in rainbow colors. There's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. And I'm also using a Wilton cutter set. It's the Wilton Peony cutter set, and there's one large petal, a medium-sized petal, and a small petal. And so for the base of the peony, I have done the same thing that I do with my gum paste roses, and I've just attached a styrofoam ball to 3 18-gauge wires that I've taped together, and then I hot glue those wires into the ball. And now I have just rolled out my red fondant, and I use a pasta roller on a size 4, and so I'm going to cut out 3 small petals of the red. And you just want to save your leftover gum paste. Put it in a Ziploc bag so it doesn't harden up on you. So I'm using a firm foam mat, and I'm just going to thin out the edges of the petals with my small fondant roller. You just want to do this very gently, or you're going to tear the little ends of your petals. And then I'm just using actually a rose petal veiner. And then I'm going to do a little additional veining to the petals. And I'll put a link to the petal veiner that I use in the blog post, and you can get a link to the blog post in the description below. And so once I've veined them, I'm just going to use a Dresden tool to make some additional lines, just some deeper lines that you would see in a peony petal. I'm just going to do that on each one. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of water to each petal, and I'm adding the water all the way up the petal on these. And then we're going to attach all 3. And we do actually want to cover the entire top of your styrofoam ball. Just try to get them evenly spaced around. And you may have to add additional water to get them to stick well on the styrofoam ball. So you want to lift up the ends a little bit with your Dresden tool, make sure everything is stuck down really well. And I'm just adding a little water to stick the ends down. Okay, so we've got our red rolled out again, and we are going to cut 3 more petals of the red gum paste. And I'm using my firm foam board again, and we're going to thin the edges again. And we're just veining them with the rose petal veiner that I did before. Just making some additional lines. I've sped it up a little bit so you don't have to watch the whole thing in super slow-mo. I'm going to add some water, and then I'm going to attach them like I did before a little bit further down. And we're just covering those empty spaces. And these petals are going to stick up just a little bit more than the previous petals. Now we're going on the 3rd row, and it's also red. We're using the medium-sized petal cutters, and we're cutting out 5. And I'm going to put a link in the description below for the blog post. And on that blog post, there is an opt-in that you can click. If you enter your email address, then you'll get a free reference guide. It tells you all of the rows, all of the colors, how many you need for each row, things like that. So it's really easy to reference that when you're trying to make your peony flower. So I'm just doing the same thing I did for the other petals. But this time I'm going to set them on some teaspoons to let them set up for about 20 minutes or so, just to get a little firm. I want them to have a little cup to them. So I took them off the teaspoons and I'm cutting off the very bottom. And the reason I'm doing that is because they'll stick out a little further down than the styrofoam ball. It's just easier for me to work with. And I'm adding water, and I'm only adding water maybe halfway up to 3/4 of the way up. And I'm adding them to my peony, and these are going to stick up quite a bit more than the previous row. You're just going to overlap them and stick them on. It's starting to look a bit like a tulip. And what you want to do is you want to take your veining tool or a Dresden tool or your finger, whichever one, and you want to make sure that it's all attached underneath each petal. And then you want to curve the tops of the petals in slightly so they kind of curve towards the center or the bud. And then set it in some styrofoam to just set up. Now we're working on the orange. And for the orange, I'm cutting out 5 medium petal size. I'm doing the same thing that we did with the other petals, thinning the edges and then putting them in the veiner and then adding some additional vein lines to them. We're going to also set these on teaspoons as well. Just do it the same way that we did the red ones. Let them set up for 20 minutes or so just to get a little bit firm. You don't want them hard. So once they're firm, just add a little bit of water. We're just doing it the same way we did the red, just a little halfway up or 3/4 of the way up. And we're going to add them. You do want the tops of these petals to be about the same height as the red petals, maybe just slightly higher. You don't want them lower because then the bud of your peony is going to be sticking up too far. You just do that the same way. Make sure everything's stuck down, and then on the tops sort of curve the petals in a little bit so they're all kind of going into the direction of the bud. And you may have to squeeze a little bit of the bottom and sort of pull off that excess fondant or gum paste. And then just make any adjustments that you need to make. Set it aside in foam to dry up a little bit. Meanwhile, you can cut out your yellow petals. And for the yellow, we're cutting out 7 of the medium-sized petals. And we're going to do these the same way we did the other petals, just thinning them, veining them, and adding some additional vein lines to them, just like we did the other colors. And we're also going to set these on teaspoons as well, or actually tablespoons. Use as big a spoons as you've got. Set them for 20 minutes and then add water. We're just gonna keep adding more petals. Just overlap them, make sure the tops are level with the orange. It's okay if they're slightly higher because you're going to curve in the very tops of the petals. Now we're on to the green, and for the green we're going to cut out 7 of the large petal cutter size. So I hope you don't run out of tablespoons because you're about to have to use a lot of tablespoons. And we're going to do these the same way we did the other colors, just thinning. And these are our larger petals, so they don't fit totally on the veiner. So I just matched the top up with the top of the veiner because no one's going to see the very bottom of the petal anyway. So it works out just fine. keep veining, and then we're going to add our other vein lines to it so it has some deeper vein lines. These are sort of looking like lettuce leaves at the moment, but it looks pretty on the flower. Okay, now get your tablespoons out and just set them on the tablespoons and let them dry. You can let them dry for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. These can go a little bit longer for dry time. I'm just cutting the very bottoms off. It just makes it easier to attach it to the flower. And adding some water, just add it about halfway up or a third of the way up. We're going to attach them the same way we did before. Sometimes it starts to get easier with these lower petals to attach them with your flower kind of upside down. Just keep going around. You may have some excess on the bottom that you can sort of pinch off once you've added all of your petals. Just make sure the tops of the petals are matching up with the top of the previous row. Okay, so now we're going to set it aside to dry a little bit, and I just use a mason jar. I just pop a little bit of foam on top of a mason jar, make sure there's a hole in the middle of the foam, and just pop in the flower. And then I will use bits and pieces of paper towel to sort of hold up the petals. You can also hang it upside down. I sort of like this method more because it gives a more open flower. Okay, now we're using blue and we're using the large cutter, and we're gonna do 7 of these petals as well, just like the green. We're thinning the edges like we've done all of the other petals. And we're veining them. Just match the top with the top of your veiner. And we're going to add some additional lines. Use your tablespoon trick again and let them dry for 20-30 minutes. Now we're just going to add them to the peony. And I'm just cutting these, the very bases of them, and I'm not cutting them flat. I'm just kind of cutting in little V's and adding a little water. Sometimes I find these petals just a little bit long, so I have to kind of trim the bottom to get them to fit properly. Now we're just going to add them, and again, I'm adding it upside down. It just makes it easier so the leaves aren't falling back on you. Keep adding. Make sure that the tops of these petals are at the same height as the green petals. And then we're just using the mason jar trick again, and I'm just adding a little bit of paper towel here and there. Now we're working on the purple, which is the very bottom of the flower. And we're only using 5 of the large because we're going to spread these out a little bit more. And thin the edges just like we did the other ones, veining them, and adding some more vein lines to them. We let these dry as well. Same process, 20 to 30 minutes. And now I'm adding water after they have dried. And we're going to attach them upside down. And I let these dry a little bit longer because they're the very base of the flower, and I wanted them to be a little bit firm, but you don't want them to be completely dry or they're just going to totally crack on you. And we're going to use our mason jar trick again. Like I said, you can hang it upside down if you want to, but I like the mason jar because it kind of allows the petals to open up more. Sometimes you want to dust a little bit of cornstarch on the base so it doesn't stick to the foam, and you just want to let it completely dry up that way for at least 24 hours. Sometimes I even leave mine longer just in case. And there you have it, rainbow peony. All right, so I hope you have enjoyed this, and I hope it was very helpful to you. Don't forget to check out the link in the blog post and grab the free reference guide so it can give you a little bit of help in walking you through this process. Okay, see you next time.